Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Tim Cavanaugh on the line with us, the news editor of the National Review. NationalReview.com is the website. Tim, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Tom. Good to be here.
Great to have you with us. The Comcast-Time Warner deal is, I've not seen any reporting that indicates that there's going to be a serious debate about this in the Justice Department's Antitrust Division. And yet, increasingly, it seems to me that the Internet is, or certainly has been since it was invented by our government and developed by the military and our university system, and then propagated out to people all over the country in a variety of ways, first as CompuServe and AOL, and then as the World Wide Web, that it's part of our information commons. Would you agree with that premise to start out the conversation?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, are we going to talk about them as cable companies or in their capacity as ISPs? Because there's a big difference in how much of the market these folks control over cable.
Right.
I have no love for Comcast or Time Warner. I've been a customer of both and can't stand them. But the cable is really a dying medium.
Right.
And in terms of internet service providers, we still have at least a dozen companies around the country with more than 1 million customers in ISP. And there's actually much more flourishing competition in ISP providing than there is just in cable. And I'll speak to my own case because I don't think I'm any smarter than anybody else out there. I moved 2 years ago, didn't turn on cable, and the more time goes by and the more I continue to have, I haven't suffered any loss really in my media diet that I've noticed. I don't know that I'm ever going to sign up for cable again. And, the same way that at some point I moved and didn't turn on the landline, and now, nobody has a landline phone anymore. So I don't really...
No, I agree with you that that's the trend, and that's the thing that concerns me is...
There is an issue maybe about how big these guys are, although they're not near monopoly in terms of 100%.
Well, let me ask you a question, Tim. What do you define as a competitive marketplace? I mean, in France, you can choose from over 100 different ISPs. And so, and dozens of different cable companies and dozens of different, and maybe closer to 100, I don't know, but it's certainly dozens of different cellular providers, telephone providers, and it's all carried over the same copper. And so you have a very competitive market. So as the New York Times pointed out, for about $35 a month, you get 150 channels of cable TV. You get 100 MIP download, 50 MIP upload broadband, plus you get cell phone service to 38 countries.
The reality is that we have, our media diets are much richer at a lower price now than they were even 5 years ago, let alone 10
No, but how do you define competition? I mean, to me, my experience has been both as a frequent flyer, in the airlines, and in other things, that if there's only 4 or 5 companies dominating a marketplace, it's not a competitive marketplace.
Comcast and Time Warner are certainly not companies I would define as products of the free market. I mean, these are companies, both of these are intimately involved with the government at all levels. One of the reasons you mentioned that there's not going to be a lot of debate about this in antitrust is that they're huge contributors to the Democrats. Right. So,
and to the Republicans.
You're not going to see a presidential executive and a Democratic executive branch doing a lot to discuss.
No, I'm totally with you. I mean, it's the Citizens United, Buckley, Vallejo, First National Bank, these Supreme Court decisions that found that the First Amendment protects money and the 14th Amendment protects corporations have done insane damage to our political process. I'm totally with you, Tim, on that. We're talking with Tim Cavanaugh, the news editor of National Review.
Wait a second. We're in a far less monopoly telecommunications world than we were back before any of those decisions.
Yeah, back. I mean, it was Nixon who decided that he was going to break up AT&T because it was a violation of the antitrust laws. Okay. It was Carter who finally closed the deal.
Back then, you had 3 channels and you had 1 option on telephones. Now you have far more options, and if you're only looking, the flip side of that, Tim, is that back to look at everything.
Back then, the TV stations were locally owned. The radio stations were locally owned. I used to work in radio and television. I worked for a TV station for a few months, but I worked in radio for 10 years in Lansing, Michigan. And the local TV station was WJIM. It was owned by a local family. They named it after their son, Jim. And every radio or TV station in that town was owned locally. I don't think any of them are anymore. And every single one had its own news staff because they all had to provide real news in order to get their licenses renewed every year, which was the Fairness Doctrine. And Reagan blew that up in '87. So I would say that there was a time when we had a competitive news market.
I really think if we're saying
media market.
In 1987 we had better options for news than we have now, I just think that's completely divorced from reality on planet Earth.
I'd say at the local level, that was true. At the national and international level, I think you're right. Back then, if you wanted to get good news of what's going on in Europe, you'd probably have to tune into BBC or something like that. But back to this issue of competition, because we're not going to go back to 1980, and probably we shouldn't. But why not? Do this Solomonic thing. Why not cut the baby in half? Why not say, Time Warner, Comcast, you guys, you can do anything you want, but we're going to just pass this really, really simple rule that says that the people who control or who build the infrastructure, the copper, the fiber, the satellite, the microwave, the cell.
Well, hold on a second.
Whatever it may be,
right now
that they can charge their costs plus a reasonable profit for the use of that cable, but they have to open it up to anybody to be the actual provider of content. Okay, for example, when I lived in Montpelier, Vermont.
Neutrality argument.
No, this is not a net neutrality argument. This is not a net neutrality. When I lived in Montpelier, Vermont, the copper that came into our house was owned by Verizon because it had been owned by Bell, and one of the baby Bells had been bought up by Verizon when they reconsolidated. Verizon owned that copper, but Vermont had a law that said that just because you owned the copper, you couldn't restrict somebody from providing content. So my phone company was a little company called Sovereignnet that was located 4 blocks from my house, and they provided probably a third of the telephone service in Montpelier. Flat rate, $25 a month. If you called the repair guy, he would walk over to your house. It was wonderful service, and it was over Comcast's copper. Now, they had to pay Comcast an access fee to that copper, and Comcast made a profit on it, or Verizon, rather. But if I wanted Verizon's phone, before Sovereignnet started, Verizon was like $50 or $55 a month. When Sovereignnet started, Verizon dropped their price. I don't know to what, because I went with Sovereignnet. But then Verizon went to the legislature and said, let's pass a law making this illegal. We own the copper. We should be able to control what carries through it. Can you and I agree that we should make a rule that the extent of government regulation should be that even though you own the copper, you cannot be the only purveyor of information on that copper? In other words, Comcast is not necessarily your ISP, even though they own the copper coming into your house.
I don't know why. I mean, there's so many more options now than there used to be, including copper coming into your house. You're not limited to just one.
But it's the same thing. If you've got a Verizon stick, if you got a Verizon USB stick, you got to go with Verizon as your USB.
Talk for a second. You may well be limited in cable traditional cable, coaxial television. But again, it's going away. I mean, that's not a booming market. It's not something that has a bright future before it. And internet access is the name of the game. That's where Netflix is getting. That's where they're streaming all of the coming ways of getting content out there. Have nothing to do with cable, and there's bigger competition there.
I agree with you, Tim. Tim Cavanaugh, nationalreview.com. Tim, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Tom. Great talking to you.